name is Jeff Fischer. I'm the pastor of Hope Chapel in the West San Fernando Valley, and we're talking about spirituality. And the reality for me is that when I was young and growing up, I had no church background. I had no real sense of spirituality. However, I did wonder, why is there something rather than nothing? There were those philosophical questions that always caused me to think that maybe there's something more. You know, why am I here? What is the purpose of my life? Is there life after death? Things that sort of plagued me, and certainly into my teens and then into my early 20s became more and more important to me as I started to confront my own mortality. I had a collapsed lung, and some things happened in my life that caused me to really evaluate what would happen to me if I died. And so I started thinking about those kinds of things and about the possibility of a spiritual realm, and I started really investigating those more or less philosophical questions and asking, you know, could it be that there is a God? And once I began to explore the possibility that there was a God, I started to think more seriously about, well, if an Almighty is going to reveal himself in a abstract way or through, say, things like the reality of the universe. In other words, there is a universe here. Where did it come from? Why is it here? Scientists can certainly tell us certain things about the elemental laws of the universe. They can tell us why certain things take place, but they can't give us the ultimate answers of, again, why is there a universe rather than not one? Difficult to understand things like the hunger for spirituality, the desire to know that there's more than what we experience here in this life. Looking at things like justice. Why do we long for justice? What is going on inside of us? What's the reason for that? These aren't things you can measure in test tubes. They're not things that you can measure scientifically. Why do we long for or delight in beauty? Why do we, why are our relationships always breaking? Why is the human race so ravaged? You know, you can answer these questions in many, many different ways and forms, but for me, they all added up to the possibility that there is a bigger realm, that the universe came into existence out of some other powerful realm that existed quite apart from this universe. And so my inquiry into things spiritual began. And at that time, I was invited to attend a church. I was playing in a rock and roll band, had a record deal, was traveling around and playing in clubs, and also surfing every day. I lived on the beach in Manhattan Beach. I was living my dream, but something inside was not fulfilled. There was an emptiness, and someone invited me to go to a church, and after telling them no a bazillion times, I finally went. When I walked into that church, I experienced something that I'd never felt before. I had felt what I now believe was the presence of God. Quite honestly, it freaked me out. I wanted to head for the exit. I didn't know what was happening. In fact, it felt kind of weird and fanatical to me. But something changed inside of me that day, and I became aware of God's presence in my life. A lot of strange coincidences began happening. People seemed to be talking about God everywhere all of a sudden. So I started reading a Bible. And I really, as I began to read about the life of Jesus, I was so compelled and overwhelmed by his love and by really seeing myself in the pages of the New Testament. Realized that maybe part of my problem is I'm out of sync with God. Part of my longing is that I really need God in my life, and to experience the forgiveness and the love of God that people in the pages of the New Testament were experiencing. And so I began to pray, and that was like diving into all things spiritual. And God really, I believe, was starting to communicate to my own heart that he was real, And long story short, didn't think it would happen in a million years. I ended up becoming a believer in not only something spiritual, like many people do say today that they're not necessarily religious, and I'd like to say that I'm not religious. People tell me all the time I hate organized religion, and I tell them, excellent, so do I. Come to Hope Chapel. We're disorganized religion. We're into Jesus. We're into God. We're not into religion. Um, but really, I began to experience the reality of Jesus in my life, and I'm an all-in kind of guy, and never imagined that I would become a pastor, but I began almost immediately to feel peace, to feel joy that I'd never had, to feel fulfilled, to have hope, to feel meaning in my life, and those are things that we can get to some extent out of things material in this life, but never had I experienced such joy and such peace and such a sense of hope and significance in my life. Something had changed radically. People in my life, the people closest to me, could see those changes, and they said, listen, something's happened to you. What happened? And all I can tell you is something spiritual happened. God came into my heart and into my life, and he transformed me. And long story short, I ended up becoming a pastor, but the way that happened really convinced me more than ever about the reality of the spiritual realm. And that was because I was really debating. I wanted to be in sales, and I wanted to make a lot of money, and that was the trajectory of my life. Last thing I wanted to do was have anything to do with, again, organized religion or church. But we started a Bible study. One of my drum techs died in a car accident. We had a meeting, and because I was the new spiritual guy on the block, they asked me to pray. I did at that meeting. And a bunch of my friends said, you know what, I think we are interested in God too. And so a bunch of us started gathering together and studying the Bible. And that little Bible study became the church that I now pastor, called Hope Chapel. But there came a day where I needed to decide, am I going to be a pastor, or am I going to do sales? And I was praying in my daughter's room after about 3 months of desperation and struggling with this decision. And all of a sudden, with my eyes closed, I saw what amounted to a big screen motion picture in front of my very eyes. And I blinked my eyes, I opened them, I saw the picture, I closed them, I saw the picture. I got up and I was scared, so I started running for the door. And I heard a voice speak to me and say, stop and watch. And I watched as what the Bible calls, and others from other religious traditions would call, a vision. And that vision sort of chronicled what my life might be like if I said yes to God and took the calling seriously and became a pastor. And after this vision rolled out, and it was as real as a movie screen, I could explain the details, but it'd be kind of boring to you. It was very exciting to me. But as soon as the vision was over, it stopped instantly, and I knew that God had spoken to me about becoming a pastor. And that's only a part of this story. My own sister had stage 4 colorectal cancer. The cancer spread to her lungs. The cancer spread to her liver, her pelvis. And the chemotherapy and the radiations and the surgeries and all the interventions and treatments that she went through did not heal her of this cancer. It kept growing. And the prognosis was, of course, very dim. And my sister is a believer, and she is a very spiritual woman. And she prayed fervently and said, Jeff, I believe God is going to heal me. She went back to the doctor. Doctor said the cancer's worse. She said, I really believe with all my heart that God said he was going to heal me. Even her own husband would sort of mock her and say, "You're not being a realist here. You've got your head in the clouds. You have a lethal disease that's going to kill you." And many others would mock her, and imagine that's tragic in and of itself. But she was unwavering and continued to believe. And you know, she has lived now 4 years with cancer in her body, and she is now, even her doctors said she stopped all chemotherapy, stopped all of the treatments, and she lives every day by faith. But she's in perfect health. You would look at her and think she's a fitness model. She is the happiest person you've ever met, and she is energetic and vivacious and vibrant. And my sister, folks, is a walking miracle. And I've seen that happen over and over and over again. In fact, Eric Metaxas just wrote a great book about miracles. How do you explain miracles if there's no spiritual realm? How do you explain the conversion of so many millions of human beings that have come to faith in Jesus if there's no spiritual realm? How do you explain those things? In fact, let's just get back to the scientific part of this. And how do you explain the universe? You know, people think they can explain the existence of life forms and their development, but you know, we still can't answer the question, what caused the first life, abiogenesis? How did life even begin? Scientists can't even touch that by their own admission today. So spirituality makes perfect sense scientifically, philosophically, experientially, psychologically, emotionally, in every way. And my own experience tells me that the spiritual realm is very real and that God is very real.